Hey everybody, welcome back to the Smarketing CONNECT podcast. And today we have our guest, Steve Markman. And again, as usual, I'm not going to explain who Steve is. I'll let him do that for himself. So Steve, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having me here today, Tom. So I run Markman Speaker Management, which is based in Needham, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. And it is a speaker placement service. And what that means is I help companies of all sizes, as well as individuals, find speaking engagements. And unlike most speakers bureaus, of which I have a division that is a speakers bureau, most of my business is helping companies and executives find unpaid speaking engagements. So what they do is they use speaking engagements as a method to boost visibility in order to generate leads for their business, whatever that business could be. It could be consulting, it could be software, it could be consumer goods, whatever that is. And I also teach them how to do it themselves.
Interesting. So you basically teach them how to find their own speaking engagements and then how to leverage it as a marketing tool.
Exactly. So they can either have me do all the heavy lifting and find the speaking engagements for them, or they can do it in a training session. I have a virtual 2-hour training session that I developed with the advent of COVID and people being stuck in front of a little rectangular box for a long time, as well as my traditional half-day 4-hour version. And it's customized to the speaker. And my clients are of all sizes. So from individual consultants to small companies, they might be a small software company, and they might be a medium to large company. I've worked with many Fortune 500 companies as well. So all sizes, all industries, all with the same goal, which is to use speaking as a marketing and public relations tool and to demonstrate thought leadership as well.
Perfect. So that being said, you partially answered this question already as to what types of companies you work with, whether they're a particular size or vertical market or geographic companies. So you've already answered that to a certain degree. So I'll ask you this question a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite type of company to work with?
Right. So probably my favorite type of company is one where they have a presentation and are in a particular industry that for whatever reason is in demand. Because like all consultants, I want to be successful for my clients. I want to teach them ways that are what I think proven techniques in getting these speaking engagements. It's very competitive and very hard to get speaking engagements, even though everybody says it's one of the most feared things on earth. You'd be surprised how many people actually do want to speak. And so it's very, very competitive. And so I would, my ideal client is somebody who is probably in a professional service firm, could be a law firm, a consulting firm, an accounting firm, because they are in the business of giving advice. They're usually good at that. And they can make a presentation where they're not doing a sales pitch, because that's not allowed, but they are able to convey tips and techniques of what makes a successful program, and that's always good. But it could be really software companies. The main thing is they should have credibility as someone who has experience in their field. That is the most successful type of client that I have. Not necessarily speaking experience, but experience in their own field and in their level of expertise. So they come across as someone who's knowledgeable and not somebody who's just starting out, because then they lose their credibility. And that makes it easier for me to teach them what they need to do and for them to be successful in getting these speaking engagements.
Very, very valid points there, Steve. So one of my favorite questions here, small businesses use tools of an abundance of resources. Do you have a favorite? Do you have like a must-have tool that small business owners should be using, and tell us a little bit why?
So since my bread and butter is my way of making a living for over 30 years is in the speaking industry, I'll gravitate toward that. And I really am a firm believer in the power of thought leadership, whether it's an article, which is very important also, or a presentation. So I think the written and spoken word are, for small companies, really a way to set them apart from other small companies in their industry. So if you can develop a presentation, that's a great tool to have. And it's not the sales presentation about what you do and how good you are at doing it. It's a presentation that will teach others information that they can use, that they can take back for their own businesses, and in a useful way, apply it to help them, whether it's revenues or being more productive or whatever the topic might be. So I would say developing a presentation, which can also be turned into an article that can be sold to or pitched to magazines and online publications. I think those are really good tools for businesses, small and large, to have.
Again, good point. So it's almost like the literal version of clickbait in the digital marketing world, right? So if you have clickbait, this would be the in-person version of that.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, so
a virtual version.
Virtual, yeah. Well, now.
Now.
So I aside from the obvious, right? So people are going to bring you in to solve a particular challenge, which would be they want more speaking engagements, right? So
right.
At a bit more granular level, what are the, like, because I always tell people that what you usually say up front is usually like a surface level surface level problem. What is the real, like, problem that you're trying to solve for them when you engage with a client?
Well, in my case, the biggest problem they have is they don't know where to go to get more speaking engagements. So they have their presentation, they've given it 2 or 3 times, or they've never given it. They wake up one morning and go, boy, I ought to listen to Steve Markman and go out there and speak. And so they don't know how to get started. But even the ones who have an understanding of it, they've done their 2 or 3 speeches, and okay, now what? How do I find out what to do? And so a challenge is for small business owners is to know and identify what speaking opportunities are out there, and to think out of the box. So oftentimes I'll ask a client, so where have you spoken? And they'll say 1 or 2 places, or what conferences have you attended? And they're probably the same too. And then I'll say, have you ever thought about speaking at the American Association of X or the blank of Y? And they'll say, no, I hadn't thought about that. And I'll say, that's because you hadn't thought of the people who attend as your audience, because they may not be your core customer, and who you speak to should typically be a mirror image of who you sell to, right? Even though you're not selling, they should be your customers and your prospects, because you want to be able to identify prospects through speaking, if that's your objective. And most of the time, people hire me to do that. They want to eventually get the people in the audience to be prospects for their business. And so knowing what sources there are online and offline to identify all the thousands of conferences there are in the world is a challenge that they have. And then after that, it's what do you do when you find it? What do you present? How do you know what to give them in order to make you stand out? What's part of the proposal process?
Very good, very good. So this question is more about giving advice for hiring people like us, right? So you're not necessarily a sales or marketing professional in the traditional sense of sales strategy, marketing strategies, things like that. But if you were to give somebody advice on how to hire, now let's just say a person like me, a sales professional consultant, what kind of advice would you give to small business owners when searching those people out?
Sure. And it's a good question. And I actually consider myself sort of a combination of PR, marketing, sales, and business development all wrapped up in one, because all of those departments are, and all of those functions, there's a piece of all of those when you're speaking, right?
Sure.
So I have worked with a lot of folks who are in those areas, business development, sales, and so forth. And what I find the best ones are the ones that have experience with the kind of company you are, not necessarily in the industry, but the size of company. So, I would make sure that if you're a business owner and you want to hire a marketing agency, make sure if you're a small company that they've actually worked with small companies, not just giant companies, because it's a different set of parameters and approaches and things that you can do, and budgets, not the least of which is important as well, for what a small business owner can do versus a Fortune 500 company.
Good. That's a good one. I like that. Just make sure that they have some familiarity with the same size and type of company that you are. That's a great one.
Right.
Okay, Steve. So this is my goofy question for the day. I ask all of our guests just to make sure that everybody out there realizes that we are human too, and we can have a little bit of fun with this. If you could be a superhero, who would it be, and tell us why?
Well, let me go get my cape. Oh no, that I forgot it. I left it in another place. So I did wear a cape. I think I probably put it away when I was 9. But I was a fanatic Superman fan. Always was my hero. I had statues of Superman all over the place, and it's always a fun thing to watch a rerun. So if I could be anybody, I would be him. As long as there was no kryptonite in the area, I would feel that I would be Superman in a heartbeat.
Very cool. And Super, is there any particular thing that he does that you can resonate with, like the ability to fly or whatever? Like, which is it? Any of those superpowers that you prefer to have?
Yeah, I think rescuing small children was probably one of the highlights.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. So this is the part of the podcast where we get to promote somebody else, right? So we all work with colleagues. You've even mentioned it earlier in this podcast that you've worked with several sales and marketing professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and we like to give them a shout out, and and then we tag them in the LinkedIn. When I post this out, we tag them in it so they know they were spoken about on a high level, on a positive level. So Steve, who do you think would be a good sales or marketing expert for this podcast, and who have you worked with and liked, and tell us why?
Sure. So one person would be Robin Samora, who is actually in your Smarketing directory. And I gave a training session for Robin a year or 2 ago, and she's one of my testimonials on my website for my training session. And we've referred business to each other, and she's helped me by giving me tips, really, really good tips when I was reviewing and redoing my website and creating some of my offerings. She's really sharp as a marketeer and consultant specifically for small businesses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I actually, and we love Robin. Robin's been on the podcast already. She's awesome. So Robin, if you're watching this, which I know I'm going to tag you now on LinkedIn with it. Hey, just want to say hi.
Robin.
All right. So last slide here we have, and this is basically Steve's contact information. So if you're curious, you're interested, you want to learn more about what Steve does, how he helps, and things like that. This is Steve's, the way that Steve is able to be contacted on here. His website's here, his phone number, his email. So Steve, aside from what people can visually see on the page, is there any other way or method that they can reach out to you or find you or check you out?
Sure. So I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, and I have a Twitter account at Markman Speaker. And I recently posted on my LinkedIn page, as well as in several groups, an interview that I did for Everything PR about how to get speaking engagements. Just a short interview. It's a quick one-page read that Everything PR published, and you can check out that posting if you think it might be helpful.
Very cool. And I will say lastly that if you don't remember any of that, you can always find Steve on smarketingconnect.com. So Steve is one of our experts that we list on Smarketing Connect. So we'll make sure you get to him. If you find us, we'll make sure you get to Steve if that's what you're looking for. So have no fear, we'll get you there. So Steve, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
Stay well, my friend.
You're welcome. You too. Thanks, Tom. Bye, everybody.